We're going to talk today about CESR, which is soon to be called the Portfolio Pathway. This is a really exciting topic for IMGs because it's one of the most well-trodden paths to specialist registration. We do work with lots of trusts who provide assistance and guidance for CESR. So if you are along that path to becoming a consultant for the NHS, then do email your CV across to us via apply@bdiresourcing.com, and we'd be happy to give you any guidance and support that we can. And as always, hit the subscribe button and you'll get all the latest updates from BDI Resourcing. So we're going to go back to the start with this and explain what the specialist register is. That might seem a bit basic, but if you're coming from overseas, it's important to recognise all these things from first principles. So the GMC register, the General Medical Council, is a register for all doctors that work in the NHS. Now, if you're below a consultant level, you'll just be on the general register. However, once you become a consultant, you're able to practice independently and take up a substantive consultant post. So the specialist register is the register of all of the doctors who have completed CCT or CESR and therefore are recognised as specialists in their field. So that was introduced in 1997 and there's a whole area of different fields that you can have a CCT or a CESR in. So you may be a CCT qualified doctor in acute medicine or respiratory medicine or whatever it might be, and that's your route to getting specialist registration. So important because it means you get recognised as being able to practice independently. You can take up a substantive post in the NHS, and I know for a lot of international doctors it's really important because it's something you can actually take back to your home healthcare system to allow you to earn a consultancy post overseas, and of course that means that you can earn much more money and it comes with all the rewards that come with that. CESR provides a route for doctors who haven't trained or haven't completely trained within the UK system. So they've not come through one of the GMC's recognised training programmes and therefore earned their CCT. So CESR provides a certificate of equivalent specialist registration. Now, what's happened recently is that the GMC have decided to change the way that doctors are able to provide the evidence needed for CESR. So I've got a couple of the quotes and statements here from the GMC, and I think they're really important that we digest them. The first says, the prescriptive and inflexible nature of the legislation means that applications for specialist and GP registration are overly bureaucratic, complex to navigate and burdensome to satisfy. I think that's a really important first point here, because what the GMC are saying is up until now, if you trained or did half of your training overseas, you would have had to evidence that you had done the exact same criteria and met the exact same evidence as someone who had done all of their training within the UK system, which is actually a big ask because of course not every healthcare system and not every training system is identical to the NHS. So they've recognised first of all that it's a burdensome process for international doctors and they want to simplify it. So that's a really good starting point. The second quote, this change does not represent a lower standard or lowered expectations of the applicants. Instead, it will introduce consistent minimum safe standards across all pathways to specialist and GP registration, both now and in the future. So I think the second key point to take from that is that the GMC are not lowering the standards, they're just changing the ways that you can provide evidence that you meet the criteria of someone who should be on the specialist register. So easier to provide evidence, but not of any lower standards. CCT is the route that UK trained doctors will go through. So if you train in the UK system, you leave medical school, you do foundation years 1 and 2, then you either go into core training 1 and 2 or specialist training and you do a run-through program. At that point, you're basically working your way through a specialist field, either as a run-through in something like histo or radiology, or as a combined section in something like surgery or medicine, where you do a couple of years of core training and then in one individual specialist field from that point onwards. So minimum 3 or 4 years, all done through the Royal Colleges, and they have to be on a recognised GMC programme. So if you are let's say a doctor who's just coming up to registrar level, then you can probably get away with joining the GMC, finding a service job in the NHS, and then once you're here, applying to specialist training at ST3 level, for example, and you could work your way through and become a consultant on the specialist register with CCT. CESR allows for doctors who are at a more senior level, who've perhaps completed some or all of their training overseas and want to have some of that recognised rather than stepping all the way back to, say, ST3, which may be a bit of a step backwards in their career. So for a UK trained doctor, they'll spend those 3 or 4 years of training gathering things like their logbook, cumulative data sheet, educational supervisor reports, all of which are signed off by the programme director. They then complete a CCT application form, which goes off to the Royal Colleges and the GMC, and eventually they get their CCT recognition and they're on the specialist register. The third route is CESR Combined Programme, CESR-CP as it's commonly known. And the good thing with CESR-CP is that actually it allows you to combine the experience that you've gathered overseas and the training you've done overseas, along with any UK experience and UK training that you've done as well. So for doctors who maybe join a training system partway through, ST4 level perhaps, or for those that have done a lot of their training overseas but are missing certain criteria from the curriculum, they're able to fill in the gaps with UK experience using the combined programme. This is a really common pathway for international doctors because getting all of your experience and evidence to match up exactly to a UK trainee is very, very difficult. We'll see where this leaves us with portfolio pathway, because of course that might make things slightly easier. We're not sure whether CESR and CESR-CP are going to be combined into one on the portfolio pathway. That remains to be seen. However, at the moment, it's a very useful route because it allows you to take all the experience you've got, and then let's say you need to do 6 months in a specialist area that you hadn't done overseas. So if you were a gastro trainee who had never done any hepatology work. Hepatology is part of the curriculum in the UK, so you'd need to do 6 months working in hepatology to gather your evidence. So you could take all of your gastro experience from overseas and then combine it with those 6 months that you maybe do in a service role in the UK, get the sign-offs that you need from that UK experience in hepatology, combine the two together, and then apply to the Royal College and apply to the GMC for your CESR-CP route to specialist registration. When it comes to making your application, the first thing you need to think about is, have you got all of the evidence required? And actually, the best piece of advice that we can give to an international doctor thinking about going down one of the CESR routes, whether it's CESR or CESR-CP, is to start thinking about gathering that evidence early. So don't wait until you're in the UK or to the point where you're thinking about making a GMC application to start gathering evidence, because by that point you're going to have to get things retrospectively, and that's going to be much, much harder work. An average CESR application, full CESR application, is usually 800 to 1,000 pages and 100 to 150 documents. So you're talking about a lot of documentation. Now, if you compile that as you go along, it's going to be much more manageable when the final submission comes around. A couple of things to note on there. The GMC won't anonymise evidence for you, so you need to anonymise everything. You need to make sure that any identifiable patient information is redacted from any evidence that you provide. So that could be a big task in hand, and obviously something you need to do with care and attention. So again, doing it as you go along will be much easier than having to retrospectively go back over potentially years worth of training to try and do that. Translations as well. Everything's going to need translating into English, so it's good to get yourself a good translator early on, or at least know that you've got someone lined up so that when it all gets translated at the end, you can have that readily available to submit to the GMC. Think about where you're going to get the evidence from as well. So different healthcare systems obviously use different IT systems, different patient record systems, all that kind of thing. So you need to be thinking about, does your system correlate with the UK, and what can you do to make sure that that evidence is best presented? because if it's unrecognisable to the GMC, unfortunately, it's going to mean that your application is rejected. You need to think about your references early on as well. So you have to have 4 references for a CESR application. One of them, a primary reference, has got to be from a medical director. So really important that you suss those out early on, perhaps let them know what you're going through at the moment. And obviously present it to them that you need your references to paint you in a certain light. They need to say about all the different things that you've done. Make sure they're detailed and good references. Again, if you wait until the end of your training to ask for those references, it might be that the medical director's moved on, they've taken another role, or they've retired, or whatever it might be. So make sure you're keeping in good communication about what you're planning to do, and obviously let them know that you're intending to put them down as your reference. Now, once you get to the stage where you're beginning your actual application, it's all done on the GMC's website. They send it off to the Royal College for you. So you pay a fee. It's £1,781 as of 2023 April. Now, who knows, that might change with Portfolio Pathway coming in, so worth keeping an eye on that. That comes in at the end of November, so we'll wait and see what happens at that point. The GMC send your application off to the Royal College and they make an assessment against the criteria and the curriculum set out in the training programs. If that comes back successful, then good news, you can join the specialist register. However, if it doesn't, you've got a couple of options. You can ask for feedback and you can think about what it was that was missing, or you can make an appeal. Usually people would go down the route of asking for feedback and trying to find out what other evidence they missed, because most of the time a rejected application only comes because something was missing. So you can fill in those gaps. It might be that you missed some references, you forgot to anonymize all the evidence, didn't have authenticated or validated evidence, it wasn't translated properly, or it might be just missing a gap, something that you need to fill in and gather some more experience and training in. You can get that feedback from the GMC and you can make a new application, or you can make a resubmission with those bits filled in. So that might be your best bet. Don't be surprised if the initial feedback is not that it was successful and that you've got some more work to do, because it is a very cumbersome and all-encompassing application that you're looking to make. The onus of CESR is very much on the applicant to make the submissions to the GMC and the Royal Colleges. Now, that's something that's really important to note, because you need to make sure that if you're going through the CESR-CP route and you're looking to fill in any of the gaps, you've got the support of a good mentor who can help you. Now, we work with some of the best providers in the NHS, some of the best trusts, some of the only trusts that actually have dedicated CESR-CP leads and education departments that are equipped to assist with CESR applications, to make sure that you can fill in any gaps and to help you identify where those gaps might be. So if you're interested in pursuing a career in the NHS and joining the Specialist Register through CESR or CESR-CP, please do get in touch. Obviously, you're going to need to be a fairly senior level of doctor to do that. So if you're a specialist or a speciality doctor, or indeed a consultant in your home country, then this is going to be the route for you. As I say, email CVs to apply@bdiresourcing.com. As always, we'll put the contact details up at the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching.
They say, oh my God, I see the way you shine.